You know how a company actually buys its stuff? That can literally make or break it. And it all comes down to something called the purchasing organization. So in this explainer, we're going to break down the different blueprints companies use to structure their buying power, from the simplest command chains to really complex specialized teams.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll get a clear definition of what an org structure actually is. Then, we'll dive into the 4 basic types you'll see out there. After that, we'll tackle some really big decisions. Should you have wide or narrow control? Should you centralize your power? And finally, how does the all-important chain of authority really work? Let's get into it.
Right, so let's start at square one. Before we can even talk about building these departments, we've got to understand the blueprint. So what exactly is an organizational structure?
Now, it's super easy to get these two mixed up. The structure is the big idea, right? It's the architect's master plan. All the rules, the roles, the relationships. The chart, on the other hand, is just the visual map of that plan. It's the drawing that shows you who reports to who. The structure is the idea, the chart is the picture.
All right, now that we've got the foundation down, let's check out the different models that companies actually use to build their purchasing departments. We're going to look at 4 basic templates.
So, we're going to look at 4 core models: line, line and staff, functional, and committee. But, and this is a really important but, you'll almost never find these in their pure textbook form out in the wild. Real companies love to mix and match, creating hybrids that work just for them.
Let's kick things off with the simplest, most traditional model of them all, the line organization. Everything here is based on a direct, straight-down-the-line flow of authority.
The beauty of this model is its simplicity. There's zero confusion. Power flows in a straight line from the top all the way to the bottom. A manager has direct, unambiguous authority over their team, which creates this crystal-clear chain of command. You always know exactly who your boss is.
And this chart here shows that classic top-down pyramid perfectly. You can literally trace the line of power. See how the purchasing manager sits at the top? Then you have direct lines to their assistant managers, who in turn have direct lines to each of their buyers. It's clean, simple, and easy to understand.
Okay, so that's the simple version. But what happens when things get a little more complex? When that simple line structure needs some expert advice? Well, that brings us to our second model, the line and staff organization.
Think of it like an army. The line folks, they're the generals on the battlefield, making the calls, giving the orders. The staff, they're the specialists back at headquarters, the intelligence analysts, the engineers, who provide that critical advice. They have a ton of influence, but they don't have the direct authority to command the troops.
Just take a look at this chart. You can see that main chain of command, the line, flows straight down, vertically, from the VP to the buyers. But notice the staff roles, like the analysts. They're branching off to the side. They're connected, they provide vital information, but they're not part of that direct line of command.
Okay, so our third model takes this idea of expertise and builds the whole company around it. This is the functional structure, where you group people together based on their special skills. You have a purchasing department, a production department, a finance department, and so on.
In this setup, purchasing isn't just some side function. The purchasing manager is a heavy hitter, a department head on the very same level as the head of production or the head of sales. This really elevates purchasing to a core strategic part of the business, with all these department heads reporting up to the same general manager.
All right, but what if you have a huge special project that doesn't fit neatly into any one department? Well, that's when you form a committee. This isn't a permanent structure. It's more like a temporary task force, built to solve one specific problem that needs a lot of different skills.
So, for instance, let's say a company is about to drop millions of dollars on some new high-tech equipment. That's a huge deal, right? They might spin up a special purchase committee. And as you can see here, that committee would pull in experts from all over, production, finance, maybe even marketing, to make sure this massive decision is the right one from every possible angle.
All right, once you've picked a basic model, you've got another huge decision to make. How many people should any one manager be in charge of? And believe me, this single choice completely changes the shape and feel of your organization.
Yeah, there's a term for this. It's called the span of control. It's simply the number of employees who report directly to a single manager. This is what determines whether your company looks like a tall, skinny pyramid or a short, wide one.
So, you're looking at a classic trade-off here. A wide span of control gives you a flat, nimble organization. Communication can be faster, but your managers are spread super thin, with less time for individual coaching. On the other hand, a narrow span gives you a taller company.
Everyone gets closer supervision, but decisions and information have to climb up and down a whole ladder of people, which can really slow things down.
And when you see it laid out like this, the difference is just wow. On the left, you've got the wide span, one boss, lots of direct reports, and a very flat structure. But look at the right, the narrow span. See all those extra layers of management you need just to connect the top to the bottom? It's a totally different world.
Okay, next up is a huge debate that happens in almost every company. Where should the power to buy actually live? Should you concentrate all your purchasing power in one central headquarters, or should you let individual factories and offices make their own buying decisions?
This is the classic battle between efficiency and agility. Centralized buying is all about power. You can bundle all your orders together, negotiate massive deals, get better prices, and keep everything standardized. But what happens if your factory in Mexico needs a critical part, like yesterday? A decentralized system gives them the flexibility to solve that problem on the spot, without waiting for approval from headquarters half a world away.
And finally, let's follow the money. How does a company actually control who is allowed to spend what? It all comes down to the chain of authority.
And this chart right here, it lays it all out beautifully. The ultimate power to commit the corporation to spend its money starts at the very top with the board of directors. Then, as that authority flows down the chain, notice how the spending limits get smaller and smaller. A vice president might have a $500,000 sign-off, but by the time you get down to the frontline buyer, their limit might only be $25,000. It's all about putting financial guardrails in place at every single level.
So after everything we've looked at, you're probably wondering, okay, what's the one right way to do this? And the answer is, there isn't one. It's kind of a trick question. The perfect structure for a giant global car manufacturer is going to be completely wrong for a fast-moving tech startup. The final choice always comes back to the company's unique goals and strategy. So the real question isn't what's best, it's what's best for us.